Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig and it is time for a Talk Magic. I am here with, in my opinion, the best family entertainer, if not in the UK, then in the whole world, a man that I have a lot of respect for, the one and only Kimmo, John Kimmonds. How you doing, mate? How you doing?
Hi, Craig. Thanks for that. Yeah,
Mate,
everybody lower your expectations after that introduction, but it was very nice of you.
I know that you don't have an ego, which is ridiculous for somebody who's in entertainment, but I feel the need to say that because I've known you for a long time. We've worked together a few times and I've always been in awe, and this is something I want to talk about in a bit, but I've always been in awe of how you can walk onto any stage with any audience, and I've seen you do it again and again and again, and you can just grab people within seconds and just get them completely invested in your show, and you can walk on cold, and it's such an amazing thing to see. It really is, and it's
well, that's nice of you to say that, Craig, because that's something that's very important to me. The connection with the audience. I think that's probably the most important thing of being an entertainer. Really, you want to try and connect with your audience and get them invested in it. And so yeah, thanks for that, because that's exactly what I've been meaning to do all the time.
You do, and you know, I want to talk about how you started in magic, but I will tell you one thing. You and I in February, just before the entire world went to crap, we did that show on stage together. And
you did, yes, that's one of the last shows I did before the whole thing went off.
And I spoke to a lot of the audience afterwards, and everybody said that you were the best act of the night. And was so funny and so amazing, and you know, that just,
I don't know, I think your son stole the whole show on that occasion.
He's got the cute factor, hasn't he? That's the thing with it.
I seem to remember running round to the front to watch him after I'd finished my bit. He's amazing, really. How old is he now?
He's just turned 8.
Wow.
And you've met him. He just loves magic. He's been around performers since he was born, so to him, he doesn't have nerves going on stage because he sees so many people going.
I got that. Yeah, I saw that. He didn't see it backstage. He was just excited about going on. But I think we're all like that when we're younger as well. You're kind of more fearless when you're younger. I've found nerves have developed more as I've got older.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with that.
When I'm out of my comfort zone, there's certain things, you know, there's things you take in your stride, but I find it's harder and harder to step out of my comfort zone now I'm older. Now I'm in my 50s. You feel like there's a lot more to lose, and there's a reputation you've built up that you don't want to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And every gig feels like a potentially career damaging opportunity. So I don't know.
Continue to put yourself in so many situations that I would find so stressful. And I want to talk about this in a bit. In fact, I'm going to come back to that because for those people that don't know you, when did you get into magic? Because you've had a very long history in magic. Have you got the typical story of I was 8 and I had a magic set bought for me? When did the bug hit for you?
Younger than that. I had measles as a child. I think I was about 4 or 5. I was a very early reader. I could read before I went to school, and I was bought the Puffin Book of Magic by Norman Hunter, illustrations by, I think was it Quentin Blake who illustrated? No, I think Norman Hunter might have illustrated it as well. I just went from there. There's a sponge ball routine in there that I did with paper balls for years. And then I went to a friend's. I saw not many people my age saw kids entertainers at parties because it wasn't much of a thing. But my friend had Hamilton Kay, who was a past president of the IBM, old Ron Kay, who lived just up the road from us, for his party. And I was completely amazed at this show. And I must say, unlike your son Rylan, I was the most terrible audience member for a kids entertainer. I wanted to shout out how every trick was done, even when I knew how they were done because I'd read books and things. And I was I'm glad he didn't remember me because I was terrible to him. And then I begged my mum and dad to book me an entertainer, and the one they booked was Wilfred Tyler, who wrote Open Sesame.
Mm.
And he actually lived just down the road from us, Wilfred Tyler. And dare I say, I didn't like him as much as Ron Kay. I thought Ron Kay was a much better entertainer than Wilfred Tyler. He was a bit too cutesy and a bit too fairy tale, gnomes and elves and teddy bears and bits of chocolate. It was all a bit fairy tale and cutesy for me, his show. But my dad met him in a pub a few years later, and said, "Oh, my son's still interested in magic," and he invited me around to his house, and my dad took me around, and he gave me a big stack of magigrams, and I wrote to Edwin, and then sort of the rest is history. I ended up working for Edwin in the end.
That's the thing. So before you went to work for Supreme, when did you start doing professional shows? Was it very early on, or was it when you were still at school, or was it
between the ages of about 13 and 15? I was always a fat child, but I lost a lot of weight between 13 and 15 because I saved my dinner money from every single day. I didn't go and eat dinner at school, and I saved it all up, and I spent the whole thing on magic tricks. And I didn't dare ask my mum to write me a check because she used to tell me I wasn't allowed to spend any money on magic. I would sellotape pound coins to a piece of paper and send them to Edwin in the post, and put notes in and sandwich them between cardboard. And so I sent it all cash through the post to Edwin, and I got these, and I built up a show. And when I was 15, I put an advert in the local paper, Kimmo the Conjurer, spelled with a K, and got my first booking that night. And I think I charged £10 for a 1-hour show. And then I had to ask my mum, who hated magic, to take me to the first show. And to her credit, she did take me and drop me off while I did the show and pick me up afterwards. And I was booked to do an hour, and I worked out the show and rehearsed it, and it was an hour long. And then I remember doing this show, and then the mum coming at the end and saying, "The parents here, we're going to have to send the kids home." And I'd done an hour and a half, and I wasn't even halfway through the material I'd brought with me. And so an hour and a half, I couldn't even do an hour and a half now. There's no way I could do an hour and a half. But my first ever show, I did an hour and a half, and they stopped me because the parents wanted to take the kids home. It was a school night.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And were you all, because obviously most people know you now as a family entertainer, but you had a very strong background in close-up magic. Did you ever want to be a close-up magician, or was it always called a family entertainer?
I did do close-up magic. I did it for a while. I had a couple of residencies in restaurants, and I absolutely hated it. I didn't like it. I don't think I'm a very confident person, and I think it takes a certain kind of confidence to do close-up magic. I have never asked a woman out or chatted a woman up in a bar or anything. And I think close-up magic is the equivalent of trying to pull an audience. You have to walk up to a table and sort of out of the blue just convince them that you're an entertainer and they want to watch you. And it was that part I found it crushing. I couldn't do it. And I would find myself avoiding going to tables because I didn't want to work. I was all right once I was there and I was into it, and I started doing it. But occasionally you get somebody who'd turn you away, and I just found the rejection so crushing. I couldn't do it. Occasionally you'd walk up and there'd be people say, "Yeah, we know who you are and we don't want you, thank you very much." And instead of going, "Oh, thank you very much, no problem," and walking to the next table, I'd be so crushed. I couldn't do it. I'm much oddly enough, although people find it more nerve-wracking, I'm far happier for me to be on a stage with the audience in rows sitting in the dark, because I know they're all there to watch me and that's what they want to watch.
But interestingly, most magicians find close-up easier to do. Walking out on a stage in front of a whole bunch of people just terrifies a lot of magicians.
Yeah, but they're all there to watch a show. I know they've not told the partner that they're going to split up and they're having a last meal. I know nobody's waiting to propose. I know they're not celebrating. All these things would go through my head. Is that couple there? Am I going to walk in at an important moment and they're just having a row or something? Or they had a bereavement, that family, and they've all come out for a meal afterwards, and I'm going to walk up and ask them with my sponge balls and ask them to watch a trick. All that goes through my head. I know if they're in the dark, in seats, in rows, when the spotlight's on me and I can't see them, I know they're there to watch a show, and I know all I've got to do is do a good show and they'll be fine with it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've always had this. I mean, we had a little chat before we started this, and I mentioned I've always suffered from imposter syndrome, and I still do. But
a lot of magicians do suffer from imposter syndrome. I mean, you are you've achieved so much in your career. You know, for those people that don't know John, he's literally performed all over the world. You've lectured in massive conventions all over the world. You've performed right up until COVID. Disney Cruise Liners, which is everyone's dream to go and do. You know, you've set up your own convention, which has become one of the most popular conventions for family entertainers worldwide. You've done so much, and I want to talk about a lot of this. And you still get imposter syndrome after achieving so much over the course of your career. What advice would you give somebody that's in the same position as you? Because you've obviously got past it, because look at what you've achieved.
Well, it's still feel the fear and do it anyway. I don't know how to do anything else, as I've found out during lockdown. I literally don't know how to do anything else. And I do enjoy it. We talk about Disney cruises. My first Disney cruise, because I'm such a Disney fan, and because that's been a thing I've wanted to do for so long, I was so paralyzed with fear, I didn't leave my room for the entire trip until the first show had finished. And I had 2 days to wait till the first show, and I spent the first 2 days in the room, only leaving to get food and then coming straight back to the room again, and just paralyzed with fear, writing to Tamar saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't, because I just felt so under pressure, really. But I mean, I think that's a good thing, because complacency is a terrible thing.
Yeah.
I feel like when we do Trix every year, I was saying to Gary about this. Well, I think the last Trix, I mean, you were at the last one, weren't you?
Yeah.
You came to the last one. And it was a really good one. We had Carissa Hendricks, and we had Keith Fields and Ollie Graham, and it was just a great lineup. And everybody seemed to go really well. Everything went really well. All the little films we made went really well. And I went up to Gary on the last day and said, I'm doubly depressed now, because we've got to top this next year. Now, as it happened, we didn't have to. So it was almost a relief. But, you know, that's always the thing. It's like, oh, no, it's gone really well. Now next year, they'll be expecting it to be as good as this. Mm-hmm. How are we going to top it? But somehow you can manage it. Every year I feel we do Trix, we top it, and I try and do that with shows. But you know,
I want to talk about Trix in a bit, because what you've achieved there is amazing. But before I do, just so I can get this timeline straight, because I want to talk a little bit about Supreme if I can. You're 15 years old. You've done your first show. You've spent money on magic tricks. You've got a show that now runs a minimum of an hour and a half.
Yeah, it had to be cut down dramatically after that. I found out I've got 2 shows at least.
How did you go from that to being a full-time entertainer stroke working for Supreme? Because that must have been an amazing experience working.
Since basically when I started, I was still at school.
Wow.
And I was charging next to nothing. I got a lot of work very quickly. And I was as busy at Christmas as I was in up to recent years. I was doing 50, 60 shows over December in that first year. My mum drove me to despite my mum hating magic, once she saw I was making money out of it, she drove me to every single show, and she was very good that way, and even would wait outside for me for the hour while I was on, and then so she was great once I established I could make it work. So I was pretty much set up to be a professional entertainer almost immediately, and I was still at school. So it wasn't a problem. I just went straight into that. The problem was that my mum wanted me to, and my parents wanted me to go to university, and I went to study to be a teacher. And then halfway through, I just dropped out, because I thought I almost didn't want the safety net. I was scared, because of the way I am, that if I had a safety net and I decided to work a probationary year in a school, I'd never get out of it. I would be too nervous to go into full-time entertainment. So I kind of wanted to have no option but to do that. And the Supreme thing, going back to when I was 15, I went to my first Blackpool convention the same year when I was 15. And I can't imagine me letting my son do this, but when I was 15, I got a National Express bus to Blackpool on my own. And I stayed in the hotel on my own for the Blackpool convention, 15. It was only one day then. And it was held, it was in the Winter Gardens, but
I remember it.
They had a night before party. Because I remember saying to Russell Brown recently, I do remember Derek Lever hammering nails into his legs did I dream that, or was that a real thing? He went, oh no, he used to do that. That's it. That's the act he used to do. So that was the act I saw when I was 15. Derek Lever hammering nails into his legs, and well, with pins, and then pulling them out, and then blood running down his leg. It was. But it stuck with me all these years. It was he did like a Indian fakir act, where he sort of did eating molten lead and self-torture things. But it was really good. I remember being amazed by it. And then I made a beeline to the Supreme stand, and it was chaos when I reached the Supreme stand. There was Edwin and a few people. Ian Adair didn't come with them, and Edwin Hooper was there, and he was shouting at all the assistants he got with him, all the people who'd come with him, and they'd left the price list at home. Back in Bideford, which was more of a problem then. They couldn't go and get it faxed to them, because we're talking about sort of very early 80s, and so they couldn't fax it to them, or so literally when anybody wanted to buy anything, they had to go to a public phone box, ring Supreme, ring somebody who got the price list back in Devon, and then get the price, and then run back to the stand. They had no idea the prices. And I stood there, and I because I what I'm like, I devoured this entire catalogue 30 that I'd ordered off them. Had this big phone book style catalogue, and I knew all the prices off by heart. And I stood there in front of the stand going, that's 25, that's 20 pounds. And he checked a few and then went, right, you come behind the stand. And I spent all day working behind the stand, just giving prices out. I was like Rain Man when it came to Supreme prices. If you showed me a prop, I could tell you what it did and what the price was, but I couldn't say I didn't know how it worked, so I couldn't demonstrate it. So I stood behind the stand, and I could describe to people exactly what the prop did, what the effect was, and I could tell them the price, which is all they needed. And then at the end of the day, Edwin said, pick anything you want off the stand and take it. And for some reason, I picked a dove transformation chest, despite not owning a rabbit or a dove, which sat in my bedroom. It was the most expensive thing, and I knew that because I knew the catalogue off by heart. It was the most expensive thing on the stand, so I picked that. Being a kid, and nowadays I'd never do that. I'd have picked something cheap, but being a kid, I said, can I have that? And yeah, take that. And I took this dove transformation chest, which stood as a sort of centerpiece of my room for years, even though I never used it, and sold it years later. Yeah.
And did you work for Supreme for a long time?
Yeah, well, the following year, I got a phone call where Edwin saying, do you want to work behind the stand again? And then I worked for Edwin. And then when Edwin decided to sell the business because he got cancer and he wanted to sort of retire and have a few years of traveling the world, he recommended to the new owners that they had me work for them. And I only actually worked in Devon for less than a year. At the end of the day, it was a proper job, and I never wanted to do a proper job. I didn't ever want to get up and do a 9 to 5, which is what it was. And oddly enough, that's the only other time apart from this year where I've done virtually no performing, because there was no time for it. And all my gigs were back in Sheffield, and I was working in Devon.
Yeah.
All my show and my gigs were in Sheffield. I was working in Devon. I didn't want to book it. I wanted to see my girlfriend at the weekend. I didn't want to be out doing gigs. So, that's where my style developed, I think, because I mean, we can get into that. That's
yeah, let's talk about that.
That's where my performing style developed, because I found myself because most of Supreme's output was family and children's tricks. They did do close up as well, but I was doing the dealer dems, or the Supreme seminars as they called them. It was a bit pretentious, but I used to go around the societies. And I found myself in the position of having to do kids' tricks, demonstrate kids' tricks to adults. And so to me, it just seemed really bad trying to get them to shout out. So I imagined an audience of kids, and I would shout insults at this audience of kids. I'd be sort of, and then I'd be hearing imaginary responses from the kids I'd picked out. And so, oh, stop crying, and it just became this more irreverent style of performing, and it stopped being the kiddie performance and more that's how it developed, really. I mean, I just decided I wanted to have a bit more. I just plugged the computer back in because it was about to go out of power then. Yeah, I just felt it was gonna. I wanted it to be a bit more edgy, and I think I learned how to talk to an audience as if they were equals.
And that's one thing that I've seen that you've done, because I've worked with you so many times, and I've seen that you don't, and a lot of kids entertainers don't do this. You don't treat the kids like kids at all. You treat them as, you know, as almost like adults, and it is kind of insulting, but in a really, really funny way. In a really funny way. I remember when we worked with each other in Cadbury World, my favorite thing was when you used to come out and you used to say to people, "Oh, do you see that building over there? Oh, it's a shame you're not coming tomorrow, because tomorrow that's a swimming pool full of chocolate." And it's the adults finding it hilarious, and the kids are. Most of the kids are like getting it, and it's just so funny to watch. But that's
I think Cadbury's was quite good for stuff like that. I always used to make out there was going to be they'd just come on the wrong day, and I'd say, you know, like sometimes they didn't get it. Some adults didn't get it. The line was, I used to say, see behind those fences over there, that they're building the world's, if you go and peek through the fence, it was a very tall fence, you couldn't really see on the other side. If you go and peek through the fence, they're building the world's biggest water park, but it's got lakes of liquid chocolate. So you get to the top of the slide and you slide down with your mouth open, oh, chocolate, 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 chocolate. And it was great. Tomorrow, when that opens, it is going to be amazing. And I know this because yesterday we had a preview date and we were all in there in our pants in the chocolate. I used to say every time, I say, if only you come yesterday or today, you just picked the wrong day to come to Cadbury World. People don't, because it was so stupid, it dawned on it. But they did get one complaint. Debbie did pass on one complaint to me from somebody who'd said, you know, you should have told us about the chocolate thing, you know, or he should have kept quiet about it, because my kids did nothing but talk about wanting to go to the chocolate water park all day.
But it's that style that makes you stand out head and shoulders above everyone else. And have you got any advice for children's entertainers or performers in general that are wanting to create a character that's kind of different to the norm? What process did you go through to try and do that?
I think like everything else, I don't really have a character on stage, other than that it's my persona, but just amplified a bit, because I'm fairly quiet in person. So my stage persona tends to be just me amplified, like a lot of people. And what I hate is entertainers who present, and there's a kind of, I think it's got to be like a conversation. It's got to be conversational. You've got to talk to the audience as equals. And I tend to talk to individuals in the audience. I don't talk over the audience's head. I will actually look people in the eye and talk to them. And if I'm doing something really awkward and shouty, I will focus on one person and shout directly at that one person, just to make it very awkward and not break eye contact. I don't really know. It's just something that's developed, but it's like if I'm doing the baby routine, and I do a baby cry routine, and I'm talking to one person in the audience. I will look them right in the eye and I will focus on them and I will talk to them, and it's clear to everyone else that I'm talking just to one person. I don't know. It's a strange thing, but I think you've got everything we do is pretty much scripted eventually. But the idea is to try and sound like you're not scripted, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know what I'm going to say next, because I've said it so many times, and you can't improvise an entire show. You improvise little bits. You know which bit's coming next. You know which bit got a laugh last time, so you're going to say it again. You know where your jokes are, and it's just avoiding that being a presenter, where you get people coming out and they're clearly not in the moment at all. I think that's the closest I can say to it. I mean, when I was doing a ventriloquism day, it was very important to me to have lessons on acting, because I think acting is what that lets most people down. They don't know how to act.
Where did the ventriloquism stuff come from? Because for those people that haven't seen John, he is one of the best vents I've ever seen. I love your act. Charlie is just brilliant. Charlie is, I think I could probably deliver. I've seen the Charlie routine so many times. I think I could deliver it word for word at this point.
I'm not sure I could at the moment after these several months out of it.
Where did the venting come from? What made you want to become a ventriloquist? Was it somebody to bounce off? Or
it's a funny thing. It's a bit like I always wanted to know how to juggle, and I can juggle 3 balls and I can juggle 4 balls. Never had any wish to put it in a show ever. Just something I wanted to do. Ventriloquism was pretty much the same. I always wanted to be a magician as a kid, but I loved Ray Allen and Lord Charles on the TV. My absolute favorite. I mean, Ray Allen's lip control was perfect. And there was one particular bit, and I talk about this I wrote a book called Ventilation, and it's one of the things I talk about at the beginning. There was a routine that Ray Allen did. It was with his alley cat character, the cat character he had. It wasn't Lord Charles, and he was doing a kids show, and he was walking around the audience, and he was trying to get the kids to say Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pepper without moving the lips, and all these kids were Peter Piper. It was, and that stuck in my head to such an extent that I wanted to learn how to do it. So I practiced and practiced and practiced until I could do the Peter Piper tick to peck tickle pepper, Peter Piper tick to peck tickle pepper, Peter Piper. And I was, so I could kind of do it. And then that was it. I'd worked out how to do it. I didn't want to do puppets at all. And then years later, I got into Punch and Judy, and I did Punch and Judy for several years. And then I kind of wanted to get out of Punch and Judy very quickly. So I thought, well, I could do ventriloquism. And I went to Blackpool and I bought the Blackpool Convention, and I bought an Animal Crackers rabbit puppet, which I thought was great, and put it in a show. First show I went out to do this ventriloquism routine, which I'd written and I thought was great. I felt so embarrassed talking to myself that I just ended up having the puppet whisper into my ear. Then I came home, chucked the puppet to the back of the garage, and decided I would never, ever do ventriloquism again. It was the most embarrassing thing. What I always say is, what you're comfortable doing in the privacy of your own bedroom is not always what you want to do in public. And I was quite happy practicing in front of the mirror in the bedroom with the puppet, and I felt I could do it. But in public, suddenly I just felt such an idiot talking to myself and answering myself. And then, like everything else, what happened was I didn't tell my ex-wife I'd stopped doing it, and she took a booking for a vent show and didn't tell me. She went, "Oh, but the lady on Saturday, she wants ventriloquism, so you're doing that instead of." And I said, "Oh, I don't do that anymore. I don't want to." I went to the garage. The puppet had been eaten by rats. Gosh. So I had no puppet either. So I had to ring Supreme. I ordered the only thing they got was a tiger. And so, send me the tiger. And the tiger arrived on the day of the show, and I was forced to go out and do a vent show. But you know, sometimes, and I found that's the best way to motivate myself, to force myself to do something. And that's the same with tricks or anything. If I know there's a deadline coming, then something will get done for the deadline. But if I've got all the time in the world to work on something, it'll never ever get done.
Yeah.
Well, if I wanted to get into virtual parties now, I would have to take several virtual parties and then have a deadline and know that one was on its way. But then I would have a virtual show by the time I got down to that date. But without that, never.
Got you. But it has helped you. Like, just again, it's another thing that has set you apart. A lot of kids entertainers don't vent. I mean, there are ones that do.
A lot do now, though. It's strange. It was a time where I felt like I was the only kids entertainer doing vent and magic, and it was a big thing. And then suddenly it all blew up, and everybody was doing it. I'm not saying they all copied me. I don't think they did, but you know, it was just that Steve Axtell did a lot for that with his puppets. Were reasonably affordable, and they look really, really colourful, and they're great cartoon characters. And you just see Steve Axtell's puppets, and you want them. You want to buy them, whether you're going to use them or not. They're just very attractive. It was like being able to buy these Muppety style puppets for a reasonable price. So I think Steve Axtell's probably responsible for the boom in kids show ventriloquism, and good on him. He's done very well out of it.
He really has.
Yeah.
Now, can I ask you a question about television work? Because you've been on TV quite a lot. Recently,
I could count it on one hand, probably.
Yeah, I mean, but fairly big, well-known, high-profile stuff. Recently, you've been on Crackerjack a couple of times. Before that, I remember watching you on the Slammer and just thinking that was so funny. Back in the day, the Slammer was amazing. It's the Holy Grail for entertainers, whether they're family entertainers or magicians or whatever, to be on TV. And you've been able to achieve that on fairly high-profile programs. Is that something that you went out and tried to make happen, or is it something that just fell into your lap and you were like, yeah?
Look, seriously, Craig, everything I have ever done has just fallen in my lap. I have never tried to do anything other than do a show. The most motivated I've ever been was when I was 15, trying to put a show together, trying to save up and spending money to do a show. And then I was doing shows to buy tricks to do more, because that's all I wanted to spend my money on. I was motivated to do shows to burn money to buy more tricks to do more shows. So it was a circle after that. But I think life's like that. I think the main problem people have is they do things for money. I've never done anything for money in my life. Everything I've done is because I've been interested in wanting to do it. I got the Slammer from doing Cabri World. I got Cabri World from doing my ex-girlfriend used to write to places asking for donations for charities, and Cabri's was one of them. And I just threw a business card. That's the most of a promotion I've ever done. I threw a business card in the letter where she was asking for money, asking for a donation from Cadbury's, and I got 10 years of work out of it.
Great.
From throwing the business card in. They rang and said, "Do you want to come and do a trial?" I was again pure luck. The company they were using was either going out of business or they decided not to use that company for entertainment anymore. And I put my card in, and they rang me up, and then I ended up, me and just one more person were doing Cabri World for the first few years. Then they got more in, and you were included in that, and they had several entertainers working. But I was there for over 10 years.
Yeah.
The Disney work, somebody said they wanted me to do a convention and do a lecture on how I managed to pitch myself to cruise companies. Never done that in my life. I went to the event convention in Kentucky. I was asked to do it and nearly turned it down because it was going to cost me so much money to do it. The fee obviously didn't cover the plane flight, but I really wanted to go to the convention. So I went and I did the evening show. Somebody came up after the show, said, "Would you be interested in doing Disney cruises?" and gave me a card. I said, "Oh yes, I'd be very interested." She said, "Well, ring me." Didn't ring her. I got home, didn't ring her. Thought, no, there's no way somebody from Disney Cruises was at a convention in Kentucky. She eventually rang me a couple of months later and said, "Do you want to do a trial?" And I went and did a trial. So everything I've ever done has just fallen in my lap. I've just been in the right place at the right time. But the advice I would give to people is say yes to as much as you can. Because if I hadn't said yes to that, so many people said to me, high profile entertainers have said to me, "What are you doing going to Kidabra?" They don't pay any money. They don't pay money. There's no money to earn from that. From Kidabra, I met David Kay. David Kay asked me to be in his group, the KGB. From being in the KGB, I ended up working the Magic Castle in Hollywood. So everything that's lost me a lot of money seems to have led on to doing something really, really well, really good, and or friendships that have lasted a lifetime. So I would say that my advice to people is just say yes to things. That's
really good advice. Just grab opportunities when you see it.
And it wasn't even a case of grabbing opportunities. It was just a case of thinking, "Oh, that'll be interesting. I'll go and do that."
Really
I
is.
did a charity. Somebody asked me to do. I was fuming about it. My first ever cruise job, was 2010, came from a charity show. That I felt like I'd been conned into doing. Somebody was trying to do a show, build himself a show reel, and to build himself a show reel, they booked a theatre and asked some other acts to perform in it as a charity job. And the person who made the show reel made one of me as well, sent that to an agency, and I got the booking. So I was fuming over the fact that I've been part of this charade to make a show reel for somebody else, and donated my time, and it turned out that it got me several years of work cruising years ago. So
that's fantastic. Now, how did you, I want to talk about Trix. And in order to talk about Trix, I feel that we need to talk about practical magic and the fireside chat and your relationship with Jeremy, because that's where it all began. How did you get involved in practical magic?
Right, Jeremy used to run with Alec Powell the Kidology convention, and he posted on Magic Bunny, the old Magic forum page. He posted on Magic Bunny that he was looking for entertainers, looking for suggestions for possible lecturers for the following year. And I went on and just put why don't you get somebody who does magic and ventriloquism, and then put hint in brackets. And then Jeremy rang me and said, do you want to come and do a lecture for us? And then that year was the same year that I won the competition. So, but he'd asked me to do it before I won that, so it worked out quite well for him. Because I was nobody knew who I was, but luckily Jeremy remembered me from Supreme. I'd been out of the magician circles for about 20 years. I didn't go to a convention for nearly 20 years after Edwin died. But I did want to go. I did go to one Kidology, which I enjoyed, and so that's I got together with Jeremy, and then he rang me up and said, "Do you want to come and do demonstrations for me?" And then we started doing video demonstrations, and then that turned into the fireside chat, which we used to do. I mean, you were involved in a couple of those.
Yeah,
I think you were at the meeting where we started discussing Trix. I think you were actually we had a dinner at Jeremy's, and yeah. I'm sure you were there that day.
I was at that. That was right at the very bit. Quentin was there as well, I believe.
Quentin was there. Philip Partridge was there.
Yeah.
Philip Partridge came up with the idea of doing the Trix talks, the 20-minute like TED talk.
Yeah.
Quick lectures. That was Philip's idea. Yeah, and there were a few of us there just discussing what would be good. And yeah. I wanted to do videos and things. I always wanted to do fireside chat live, and I always wanted to do a funny video to introduce it.
And that's Trix came out as a result of practical magic, and it has grown over the years into, in my opinion, one of the best conventions that I've ever been to. It's such a great vibe. Everybody is so friendly, everybody's so nice, and it's not like a normal convention where you could literally spend days in the dealer hall and not see lectures and not see anything else that's going on. There's so many set pieces. You put so much time and effort into it, and it's amazing.
It is a lot of work, and I think Jeremy was very, very particular that he wanted to build in, and a lot of people have told us we shouldn't do this, but I still think it's one of the best things about it. We build in dealer time, so we have breaks for over an hour where people can go to the dealers. The biggest break I think is nearly 2 hours long, and it gives people a chance to go to the dealers. So we do get people in the lectures. People aren't leaving and to go to the dealers. The lectures are very well attended. It was my idea to play a little comedy film or something before every single lecture to give people a chance to assemble. Now, I intended those really just to be like sacrificial lambs that the people would only half watch. it was just, wow, the room filled, because I think there's nothing worse than that awkward bit with, shall we start the lecture now? Is the seats aren't full and people coming in. So I wanted to start the lecture with a film, and people would take the seats for 5 minutes while the film was on, and then people would be in by the time the film had finished. Because I thought, if the lights are dim, the screen's on, they hear something's going on, let that be the one. But now people start coming in to watch the film. So it's worked out very well for us.
Yeah, and it is, and it's amazing. I spoke to Gary, you know, Andy Gladwin from Vanishing Ink. I spoke to Andy a few weeks ago, and we talked about the pressure because he does the session convention.
Oh yeah.
And he talked about the pressure that he feels every year having to top that previous year.
That's the worst thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it must be difficult, because you've built this whole community. You know, the Trix In The Stix Facebook page. And by the way, if you're a family entertainer, especially, or a kids entertainer, and you're not on that Facebook group, you absolutely should be. That group of people that you've collected, it is like a community, and they expect it to be better every single year. How do you go around topping that? How?
I don't know. I think you tend to get better at what you do as you go along. And also, I do recruit more and more people all the time. And that's another bit of advice I'd give to anybody in entertainment. If you see somebody who's really good, don't be jealous. Make them your friends. Be friends with them. If I see somebody who's really good, I don't seethe with jealousy about it. I think, oh, right, they'll be good for Trix. We'll recruit them. That they've got, you know, if I see somebody who's really talented if I can find somebody who's really good at making 3D graphics, I think, great, I can stop doing that myself and delegate that job to someone else. And so it's just one of those things. I think if you can find a good team of people to start with, it was just me. I mean, Gary did all the work with us, and it was just me and Gary, basically. Gary running the technical side on the day, and me doing all the films, and Jeremy acting in the film. So it was me, Jeremy, Gary, and we did everything. And now the team has really expanded. By the time it came to the second year, we did this Breakaway One show, and we got a little team of performers together where we write sketches and scripts, you know, and we do that. And we so people do now contribute ideas all the time. And in fact, people write to me, people have said to me, why can't I be part of it? I say, you can, just write something and send it me. And very often they don't. and then they say, why can't I be part of it? I'm saying everybody who's part of that has contributed something, they've done something. So if you want to join in, then join in, because I'm all for making it better. It's like when I saw Max Fulham the first time putting his videos out, I knew immediately we wanted him for Trix.
He's amazing. He's amazing.
I'm proud to say he did his first lecture at Trix. He could have easily done an hour. I didn't want to I gave him a 20-minute lecture, but he could easily have done an hour then. No problem. He's like Ryland and young performers in general. I don't want to say he's got no fear, because I can't see inside him, but he shows no fear. He's just totally fearless and confident without being egotistical. So yeah, that's what you want in an entertainer, sort of an air of confidence without all the ego attached to it. And yeah, so that's what it's always been. We've got a massive team of people who contribute, and so it does get better, because even if all the contributes an idea that we can work on, then it's great.
And you know, there's not many people that know as much about kids entertainment as you know, with Trix and your career and everything that's gone on. What one piece of advice would you give somebody who either wants to become a kids entertainer, maybe they want to diversify, they've been a close-up entertainer and now I'm going to be a kids entertainer, or somebody that's a kids entertainer and wants to be a better kids entertainer? Is there one piece of advice, one golden nugget that you can kind of drop that might help people?
Well, it's going back to what we said. It's you've got to be in the moment, and you've got to remember that party or that show is very important to the children who are there. It might just be another show to you. So don't fall into that being a presenter and just delivering your lines. You've got to be in the moment. You've got to say everything as if it's the first time you're saying it. If something's popping up from behind something, remember you're seeing that for the first time and reacting to it. There's nothing worse than those sort of really bad reactions where they react before they've even turned to look at it. Very often, and that kind of thing. You've got to just acting. It's all about acting. It's all the actor playing the part of a magician thing.
It really is.
And I think that's really what it is with kids entertainment. Far more than the props. If they see you as somebody who is just talking to them as a equal, then you've won, really.
Now, I want to talk about one more subject, which is something that we haven't touched on at all, which is your own personal creativity. You have your own kind of magic shop for your own products. I don't want to say that you create tricks, because really, when I see something that you've brought out, it's more of a routine. You know, you see so many tricks brought out these days, and it's like, this is a trick, but they don't give you a presentation for it or anything. But you have so many routines. I remember your lecture notes, so beautifully produced, and the race game is fantastic. You've created so much. Your silk routine, it's just brilliant. You know, with the your version of it.
That was a needs must thing as well, because I was lecturing at Kidabra, and I wanted things that fitted in a pencil case to fit in I wanted to have most of my lecture in my carry-on, because I'm very paranoid about losing my luggage. And so if I'm on a cruise ship or anywhere, I want my show to be in my carry-on bag, or at least enough stuff to do a show. And so the fact that it was just 4 silks, and that's it. That's all there is to the routine. It's just sympathetic silks, but it's a very, very simple version of it. And that's where that came from. It was just I don't know. I don't want to put it in lecture notes unless I've really worked it.
And the question I was going to ask you is, how do you go about creating something like that? You want a new routine, whether it be to sell to magicians or whether it be to put in your own act. What's your inspiration? What's your starting point? How do you go from no idea at all what you want to achieve to the race game, which, and let's be clear, is pretty much done by every single kids entertainer in the UK in their act?
It's strange that, because that was the one trick in that lecture notes which I considered filler. It was the only one in that thing that hadn't been in my show and been used regularly. It's strange. In fact, the first iteration of the lecture notes included a routine which was awful, and I changed it for the reprint. In fact, I put an extra page in the first after the convention, and then when it reprinted, I took out the original routine altogether, because the original routine was 3 children compete with me and I win every time, which is the worst possible thing you could do for kids if you're setting yourself up against. I mean, some people could pull it off, and some people do it that way still. But to me, having a kid win against 3 adults is the way to do it. But that was one of those things that was in the lecture notes. I made one up to do it in the lecture, and I said to Tamar, I feel like a fraud. I'm going to put this in the show today, and I'm going to do it. And I went and did it, and it didn't go down very well. And then I went to the next show, and I switched it round and did it. Got a kid out, and it went down so well. I remember ringing Tamar saying, "I now wish I could take this out the lecture notes and just keep it to myself for a bit, because this is the best thing I've come up with in years." And it took 2 shows. One show it failed. The second show, and we talk about developing routines. I don't know if you're the same, but everything's pretty much developed in front of an audience, which is why this year's been a killer for my creativity. Yeah. Because although you can come up with concepts and you can come up with ideas for things, nearly everything I do is developed on the fly in front of an audience and is improvised. And then bits stay in and bits come out and things change around. I very rarely start off with a routine that's complete. So, yeah, I would say if I'm doing a routine, it's formed in front of the audience, and the audience I let the audience lead it a little bit. I'll do it very sort of straight out the box to start with, matter of fact, just do the trick as is, and then kind of sometimes the audience will shout something out that they, all right, I'll go with that, and we'll do that. I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, I did a thing where a rabbit was turning. Years ago, I used to do bunny clown. where the rabbit turned from brown to white, and the kids kept shouting, "He's orange," because the paint looked slightly orange from certain angles. And so this whole "he's orange" bit became a running gag all the way through the show, just because the kid shouted it out once. So little things like that, you let the audience lead you, which is why this year's, I say, it's killed my creativity a little bit.
Yeah, it's I could understand that, but I think that's one of the big advantages of your routines. When you buy a product from Kimmo, you know it's going to have been worked in. It's not a pipe dream that somebody's decided to market.
Yeah, and I would suggest to people to try the routine first. I mean, it was Whit Hayden who turned me around on that, because loads of people say, I throw the instructions away, I throw the routine away, and I come up with my own routine when I get a thing. And I remember Pop Hayden saying, you know, if you bought a trick and a routine, that's been worked in, and there's a reason for every line, there's a reason for every part that's in that. So try the way of the instructions a few times first, and you might find out, and then you put your own ideas in. And I would suggest that's a good idea. If you buy a trick with a routine, learn it as is, and try it as it comes in the box a few times first, and then start incorporating your own ideas. I think throwing away everything that somebody's worked to give you is sometimes a bad idea. So I always do that. After Pop Hayden, if I buy a routine, I'll always try it as per instructions a few times first.
And very quickly, before we wrap all this up, when you won the Family Entertainer of the Year at Blackpool, you went out in, and we talked about this off camera before we started the interview, you walked out in a dark suit, which was completely against what other kids entertainers did at that point. You did a marketed routine that everyone does, which is acrobatic knots, and blew an entire audience of magicians away with it, and then did a puppet routine. You've talked about having imposter syndrome. Do you have any advice for somebody who's wanting to enter that competition? Because every year you see the best of the best entering Blackpool, obviously not this year coming, but what advice would you have as somebody who's entered and won? You know, your choices that you did. I see a lot of people, well, when I went and did it, I was doing big illusions. I was like, I need to stand out. I'm going to put, but you went it with a couple of pieces of rope, John. I mean, wow.
Well, that pretty much was a decision. I do think that you need to do your act. The idea of putting together a competition act to me is abhorrent. And everyone I've seen has been horrible, where they've obviously put an act together for the competition. And they've rehearsed it, they've not worked it in front of an audience. I think you've got to do your act. I mean, you would say you're doing illusions. That's your act. I've seen your act. Your act is illusions. So I mean, that's not that you didn't assemble an act specifically for the competition. I've seen your act, and you did your act.
Yeah.
In the competition, your act is illusions. So that still follows. The black suit was a decision, and it although I've not admitted to this before, the black suit was not something I used to wear for kids shows. Generally, that I've made that decision to wear it on stage. I knew there'd be a big red curtain behind me. I knew I'd be holding props up in front of me, and I didn't want them to be lost. I even wore a black tie and a black shirt. I wore everything black. I didn't want any props to be lost in my clothes. But I did have no idea what I was going to do. Even to the point of stepping out, I hadn't put an act together. I just had a box full of stuff. And you see me, if you actually watch the video of it, which is online, it's on my YouTube channel, you see me halfway through start to do a trick and then decide not to do it. I say, have you ever seen a talking book? And then I realize how much time I've got left. And then go, oh, you're not going to see one now. And I get something else out because I realize how much time I've got left, and I'm not going to have time to do Charlie, which is the bit I wanted to do. So yeah, what I did find out was it was 17 minutes then. I think you only get 12 now, if I remember rightly, but back then it was 15 minutes, but they gave you a 2-minute leeway, so you could have up to 17 minutes. And I found my routine took a lot longer because reactions take a lot longer on a stage. I didn't know that. That was also the first time I'd ever been on a stage. that competition. I'd never been on a big stage before. I'd only ever worked church halls up to that point and birthday parties. I'd never been on a stage, and I found out reactions take a long time to die down. If you get a laugh on the stage, you have to wait so much longer to come in. And so what would have been 7 minutes in the show took 17. So I didn't even do my closing trick. It's a miracle I won it anyway. But it was a choice to go small because I applied to do it and then didn't get asked. Someone dropped out, and then I was asked last minute to do it. Well, I was asked in January to do it, and so I said yes, of course. And yeah, it was a strange thing because I had nothing planned, I had no show planned, and I just thought, well, I'll take some stuff out and I'll do whatever comes into my head. But I saw the other acts on the bill. I saw there was Dave Allen and Andy Clockwise, all heroes of mine. I got all the videos were on my shelf, and so I thought they're all going to be doing really big things. The only thing I can do is go small. So I decided to stay in one spot on the stage. I never moved from that spot. I didn't run up and down the stage. I stayed in one spot, kept it focused, had the spotlight on me in the middle, and I think it looked different enough to stand out.
And how important is it winning a championship? You've talked about everything that you've achieved is luck. You know, did anything come from being an award-winning children's entertainer? Because I know this is a debate that goes on in Trix literally daily.
Honestly, I trace every good thing that has ever happened in my career back to that one event.
Wow.
I would honestly say winning the Blackpool competition was the turning point in my career. I mean, I suppose it is what you make of it, although I didn't make anything of it particularly. I got a little bit of local TV coverage. That will never get you anything in regards to shows. I got a bit of local TV coverage from winning an award. I got in the local papers for winning the award. None of that will get you a single booking. What I did do to translate that into something was I got a lecture at the Magic Circle, and then I got a lecture at Kidabra, because I wrote to Mark Daniel and said it was the only year they called it the World Championships. So I thought that's quite an angle to take. I'm the world champion, even though there's only bloody 6 people in it. You know, it's not. I mean, I thought I'll take it. And so I wrote to Mark Daniel at Kidabra and said, I'd love to come and lecture for you. I know it's too late this year, but I'll do it next year. And he said, oh, I could probably squeeze you in this year. And again, at my own expense, went out and lectured at Kidabra. And it is at your own expense. I mean, I got a free registration to Kidabra, which was worth it for me. I really wanted to go to Kidabra. It was a big thing for me to do. And then I say from there, met David Kay, got loads of connections. It was a networking thing. And virtually everything, right up to the Disney cruises and the TV shows, probably came as a result of me doing that.
So you would advise any kids entertainer that wants to get more opportunities, get more work, enter Blackpool, right?
If you can win it.
Yeah. You just said you didn't know you were going to win it. You didn't even.
If you're ready. Yeah. I felt I was ready.
Yeah.
Although I must say that when I watched the video back, it takes me back to that moment. And when I walked out, all that was going through my head, all the way through the rope routine, is you're blowing it, you're blowing it, you're blowing it. I remember just that on almost a loop in my head. You're blowing this, you're blowing this. Because I stumble over my words. I call the knot a note at one point, and I go and talk to a kid, and then have nothing to say, can't think of anything to ad lib, and then walk back, and then decide I'm going to stay in the middle. You can see me diverting from my plan, and then trying to pull myself back onto it on a couple of occasions. But you know, it's like those things. You don't. The audience kind of just goes with you. Yeah. And those bits stick out to me. So I still thought I'd lost it. I went home. I went home. I wasn't even there when they were announcing the winner. I missed the announcement. I had to go back the next day to collect it.
That's hilarious.
I had to drive back the next day. I went home that night and did a close-up gig, and then I could hear my phone going off in my bag during this close-up gig, and then it was full of like, congratulations, you won, where are you, on my phone. And I had to go back the next day, and oddly enough, the next day I had a show in Buxton, which I thought, well, I'll do the show in Buxton on the way up to Blackpool, and then I'll be there in time for I managed to blag a ticket off somebody for the thing, but the show in Buxton I did was probably one of the worst shows I've ever done. I actually died on my arse. So on the way to pick up my thing, I had probably one of the worst kids' parties I've ever had in my life. So
you're only as good as your last party, right?
Just to keep you grounded.
So I want to wrap all this up now, John, but one last question. What's next? What are you planning? Because I know I know you've had a few months off, forced months off, as we all have. What's next? Obviously, you're going to carry on doing Trix. Are you aiming to do Trix in 2021?
We are aiming to go ahead in 2021. I'm hoping next thing in my agenda is trying to get a vaccine. Now I've lost a lot of weight while I've been concentrating on trying to lose weight and getting fit during the thing. Although the target I set myself was still in the obese range, so I've cunningly left myself in the at-risk group so I can get the vaccine, but also lost about 4 stone in the process. And well,
so, I honestly don't think you can lose too much weight, because Charlie won't have any lines to say to you. I mean, half of the things that Charlie says to you in your act is, you're a fat magician.
There's enough weight to not be too much of a danger to my health, but enough to still have the puppet call me fat and not have any kids argue with it. So yeah, it's a balance. I'm just really, I mean, obviously I'm hoping the cruising will come back. It's going to be a case of building the business up again, I think. I mean, we were saying earlier, you're in a good position because you've kept the virtual parties going. It's something I didn't really do. I've done a few. Maybe I'll do some virtual parties.
I know you well enough to know that you'll only do it if you can make it spectacular. Like, it's very easy to go out and do if anyone's seen your show, the perfect example is the effort that you go into with the music and the sound effects and everything like that. It's very different to a lot of kids entertainers that turn up and just do a show. There's nothing wrong with that. I run Non-Stop Kids, and that's what we do. We go up and we do a show. We have a nice speaker. We have a nice backdrop, but we don't do any of that sort of stuff. But that's what sets you apart. And I think
it's a lot of concentrated effort putting it together to start with, but I don't make a lot of effort during the show. I mean, it is just a sound system and a remote. There's nothing special. I am very lazy, but I have small periods of activity where I'll work on something, and it's going to have to be, again, I'm going to have to be creative. I'm going to have to come up with something to replace the mask routine, which has been my standard closer. Not my choice. That was the one thing corporate gigs used to book me to do. They just wanted the mask routine. So I can't see vent masks coming back anytime soon. So I'm going to need to come up with something else to take the place of that.
But it's like you say, when you're put into a situation where you have a timetable, when you start getting gigs coming back in, which you will do, and you got corporate gigs or you got cruises, whatever it is, you'll come up with something, because then your back's against the wall and you know that you've got a deadline.
Yeah, and that's the only thing that motivates me is the ticking clock. Watching the time ticking down. I'm already getting nervous about Trix. We're not even into 2021 yet. I start getting nervous about it.
Well, where can people go to see your stuff? Because I've talked about your lecture notes and the race game. What's the URL? I'm going to put it down at the bottom here. Where would people go?
You can get my lecture notes from kimmoshop.com.
Yep.
And I've got a YouTube channel. You can perhaps put a link to my YouTube channel there. It's kind of confused because it's got a lot of trick stuff on it, a bit of my own stuff on there, a bit of Nutty Noah's stuff on there as well. One of Nutty Noah's songs got 20,000 views on my channel. I did the video for it, and I think that's one of the most viewed ones I've got at the moment. And I only saw that the other day. Yeah, so we'll put the link to my channel up. You can see the Trix videos. We've got we do little funny videos and sketches for Trix, which are,
it's well worth watching them. They're so funny. They're so...
Well, a bit like yourself, we like to court controversy a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly in the Breakaway One show, we like to be a little bit irreverent. We like to prick a bit of pomposity and take the piss out of other entertainers occasionally. As you're no stranger to that yourself, Craig. So
I've been the target.
I think it keeps us all grounded. I think I think it just keeps us all grounded anyway.
It does.
I think about time. Social media's done us a big disservice anyway, because people take things so seriously on social media.
Oh, I know.
Nobody takes it seriously in person.
You know, I did the Honest trailer on the kids show Rockstar, and I had people messaging me go, "How dare you do this to Eric? How dare you do this to Eric? How dare..." And it was all over Trix, and I had Eric contact me going, "This is hilarious." It's kind of like he didn't have a problem with it. He just wanted to make sure that it didn't show up when people YouTubed him, which it wouldn't do because I hadn't tagged it with his name or anything, and he was fine with it, and he thought it was hilarious, you know. So
yeah, well, I think most people in the business can take a joke, but people take themselves far too seriously on social media, as we find out. I mean, just look at the political climate, how it's divided people to the point where friends won't talk to one another, and people do take you very seriously, everything you put on social media. Whereas in person, I famously always tell the story about doing a road safety show once. And I wanted to do a serious part at the beginning of the show where I talked about the statistics regarding road traffic accidents in the area. So I'd research it and I'd be saying, you know, 3 children were killed on this road. And the kids were in stitches while I was saying it, because nobody takes anything I say seriously. So I can't do anything educational in the show or anything like that. But on social media, people take. So I think it's important at Trix and on social media to sort of poke fun at people occasionally, particularly some of the pomposity and egotistical things that we tend to get up to as entertainers. Because I've seen things occasionally and thought, oh yeah, I do that. There was a time I used to post about every single show I did. And I thought, you know, why am I doing that? You know,
well, I'll be honest. I went through a period a couple of years ago where I used to just drop links to blogs I'd written in Trix just to piss people off. You know, and you knew you were actually commenting on there. People were getting furious, and you were like, "Yeah, he's not being serious." And people were like getting really angry. I don't know. I was bored. Don't do that anymore. But for a period of time. I was just, yeah, I don't know. But,
well, there's a certain fun to be had winding people up, but
yeah,
it runs out a little bit. I think we all need to be a bit kinder to each other in the lockdown. I feel a bit kinder towards people these days.
And is there a URL for Trix? There isn't it? Is it Trix In The Stix?
Yes, trixinthestix.uk.
That'll be at the bottom of the screen.
Or .co.uk. Both of those lead to it. We do have tickets available because obviously not everybody's been able to make. Some people ask for refunds because of the yeah. But to be honest, we actually gained some people this year. We did a live Trix In The Stix. That's still up on the Trix site. If anybody wants to join the not the Trix site, on the Trix Facebook page, if you go to the Trix group in the pin post, there's still the links to the live Trix In The Stix we did.
Well worth checking out.
For this year's wearing these teeth in for a friend. For this year's convention, we did a virtual one. I wish we charged a fiver for it. We had 2,000 people watching. We did it for free, but that's what we like.
Yeah, and I that's the thing about Trix. I get the impression that you and Gary don't do it for the money. You do it.
We certainly don't.
For the fun of it.
We certainly don't. It was last year. We Gary got in touch with me. There's one you came to. He got in touch with me and said, well, this is how much is left after we've taken the registrations out. And he went, that means we could afford this person for the evening show. So we spent our share of the profits on getting a surprise act for the evening show just because we wanted to see it.
That's great.
We certainly don't do it for the money.
No.
Or the prestige.
Which is why so many people should support you. They really
it is fun to do. But we'd have to pay tax on it if we earned any money out of it anyway. So what's the point?
John, Thank you so much for coming on the channel. I really
You're welcome. It's been nice to be in clothes at this time of day. I've actually got trousers on as well. Look, you can see.
Hey, that's impressive. That's impressive. Yeah, guys, you really need to make sure that you go onto the Trix Facebook page, check out John's shop, and yeah, thank you once again, mate, for coming on the
cheers, Craig. It's been a pleasure. It's been nice to talk to somebody. I've forgotten how to talk.
You're the man. You are absolutely the man. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm sure John will see them and maybe reply to them. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be back tomorrow with something else. We put 14 videos up every single week. So I'll see you tomorrow. My name's Craig from Magic TV. Bye, everyone.